At the same time, of course, that we are in D.C., there will be a number of people marching in southern West Virginia. And they will be sort of reenacting, I suppose would be the best word, the march on Blair Mountain that took place 90 years ago. There's only one problem. 90 years ago, the March on Blair Mountain was a march for essential human rights for people, men and their families, who worked in brutal, hateful, oppressive, nightmarish conditions under the thumbs of a profit-driven coal industry that was positively soaked and sodden in blood and cared not a damn about human beings. It was said back then, and it was true, that the coal companies cared more about a bank mule than they did about a human being, because human beings would line up and work. There was always somebody standing there waiting for a job, but you had to go out and buy a good mule, and good mules didn't come cheap. Of course, it must be remembered that the miners in West Virginia took up arms against the coal company when they felt they could not tolerate it any longer. They had been harassed and deliberately pushed into violence, and they took the bait and fell for it. And they got their guns and started marching on Logan, West Virginia, and it culminated in a battle at Blair Mountain in which the full force and fury of the United States government, and as well as the state militia and state police and the coal company gun thugs, were brought to bear on those poor men who only wanted a decent wage. It must be remembered that they were crushed like bugs because they had adopted the use of violence. It must be remembered that the Battle of Blair Mountain is a monument to the futility of violence, because the beating that organized labor took at Blair Mountain was one that reverberated throughout Appalachia and killed organized labor stone stump dead until a piece of legislation was passed in the FDR administration, the Wagner Act, the National Labor Relations Act, that allowed labor a chance to organize on at least somewhat of a level footing with management. And that's the history. Fast forward to 2011. As you know, because we have talked about it on a number of occasions, mountaintop removal in Appalachia has destroyed over 500 mountains. It has buried in excess of 1,000, 1,500 miles, perhaps 2,000 miles of what were once beautiful mountain streams. An area of Appalachia the size of the entire state of Delaware or more has been forever destroyed. And in the destruction, massive toxins and poisons have been let loose into the air and the water that have turned pockets of Appalachia into little cancer incubator communities. Some of you may not like this, but the truth must be told. Who's doing some of that? The United Mine Workers of America. Because, see, it doesn't say on your UMWA card whether or not you work on a mountaintop removal job or whether or not you work honorably underground. It just says you're a card-carrying member. When the United Mine Workers agreed to admit mountain removers to their ranks, they abandoned, you see, the high ground that they had taken in their long struggle for rights and justice. They abandoned it. They walked away from it. And that high ground is now occupied by the people I describe as the hardest working, bravest people I know, the folks, among other groups, the folks at Coal River Mountain Watch, by Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, by the Southern Appalachian Mountain Stewards, and many other organizations fighting, struggling for essential human rights, for all Appalachian people, not just a little handful of demolitions experts who ruin the lives of thousands and thousands of others. And so it is that this March on Blair Mountain must be remembered not as a commemoration of unionism, but as a present manifestation of the absolute determination to end once for all and forever mountaintop removal, and to extend that ban to all forms of surface mining that plagues every community wherever it may go, even as far as you may recall, even as far as Inner Mongolia. So as we go to D.C., they will be marching. And I would simply advise you, or suggest to you, this is not about the UMWA. Because at this point in time, the UMWA is a part of the problem, not a part of the solution. The UMWA is actively involved in poisoning, blasting, and destroying out of hand entire communities, entire mountains, entire streams in Appalachia. There's about 1,000 UMWA members working on mountaintop removal sites. And they have abandoned any pretext of working for any sort of justice, because you cannot blow up mountains. You cannot destroy communities. You cannot bury streams. You cannot poison the water with which children bathe and brush their teeth. You cannot do those things and claim to be involved in anything resembling justice. The UMWA is morally and ethically bankrupt. And the only reason that the UMWA leadership adopted mountaintop removal is because it protected its leadership's cushy existence. And understand, it gives me pain to say these things, because I am the son of a union miner. I am the grandson of a union miner. I am a nephew of a union miner. And I am the great-grandson of a union miner. My darling wife, Agnes, is the daughter of a union miner. But if one is going to live with any degree of honesty with oneself, one has to deal with problems like this. And the problem now, and for several years, has been that the UMWA cares not a tinker's damn about the mountain communities from which its long heritage of struggle arises. Because you cannot care about a community that you are in the business of destroying. We talked a few weeks ago about a New York Times article on a little West Virginia dot on the map called Lindytown. Lindytown is a ghost town now. Lindytown has everything but tumbleweeds. The churches are abandoned. The homes are gone or going, bought out and marked for destruction by a coal company. It was a little union town once. Now, it's gone. It's gone. It's over. And the list of towns destroyed, as Lindytown has been, reads like a list of the dead. And some of those towns have been killed by the United Mine Workers of America. There is no more profoundly vigorous voice for organized labor in this country than what I am. But I am not going to blink. I am not going to blush, and I am not going to hide from reality. So you need to just remember, when you start seeing lots and lots and lots of publicity about this march, if anyone asks you a question, you make it clear to them that this march doesn't have a damned thing to do with the Union or the romantic history of gunfire, privation, and starvation and attack that took place 90 years ago. It doesn't have a damned thing to do with it. It has to do with the fact that mountaintop removal and surface mining must end. And you got to understand, the United Mine Workers of America will never, ever denounce mountaintop removal because they have members working on mountaintop removal sites. Cecil Roberts, the president of the United Mine Workers of America, has been part of the assault on people of good conscience and goodwill struggling to end mountaintop removal. Tree huggers. He has been part of the assault on the Environmental Protection Agency for doing little more than its job. And barely that. He has gone hand in hand with the coal bosses to insist that mountaintop removal persist, and not only persist, that it expand. I don't know if you noticed or not, but the purchase of Massey Energy by Alpha Natural Resources has gone through. Look for the UMWA to put on an organizing push. Alpha Natural Resources is not going to stop doing mountaintop removal until they are legally compelled to do so. Guess what? Nothing would make Cecil Roberts happier than to be able to organize every mountaintop removal site that Massey and now Alpha Natural Resources controls. Nothing would make him happier. And he would gladly set off the first Union charge on a Massey mountaintop removal site, the first blast. I'm not making this up. These are facts.